This year, I invested $95,000, and the reason I know that is because I track every single dollar I spend, save, and invest. For a little bit of context, my name's Kang like Kangaroo. I'm 25 years old, and I'm a Canadian that's living and working in Seattle as a software engineer. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down my budget for 2023. Now, this video is not meant to be a flex in any sort of way. I'm just a personal finance nerd, and I really love talking about this stuff. But that doesn't mean that the title is clickbait. I actually did invest $95,000 this year. But before we talk about investing, I think it first makes sense to talk about pay. I'm a software engineer with 2.5 years of experience, and my base salary is a little bit under $130,000. On top of that, this year I got a cash bonus of $14,700 and a vacation payout of $3,000 because our company recently switched from paid vacation days to unlimited PTO. There's some other work benefits that I also get that count towards the total. So if we're just talking cash, my gross income this year is $147,138. Luckily for me, I have an RSU which gets added on top of my gross pay, which brings in another $30,000 each year. So we add that all up, my total compensation is around $176,000 a year. So with this gross income, I max my pre-tax 401k, I contribute the max that I can into my ESPP, contribute a very little amount to my FSA, and I also have to pay tax. Now, since I live in Seattle, I only have to pay federal income tax, but that adds up to about $41,624 in income tax. Let's now talk about the investments. This year, I invested a total of $96,640 across my 401k, my Roth IRA, my taxable brokerage account, and crypto exchanges. So like I said a little bit earlier, I maxed my 401k, so this ends up being $22,500. My company also provides a very, very good 401k match, which comes out to $11,250 a year. Like I said, this match is very, very good, so it's a no-brainer that I max it every single year. Next up is my Roth IRA. I invested the max amount that I could into my Roth IRA, which for 2023 was $6,500. Next up, let's talk about my taxable accounts. This year, I contributed the max that I could into my ESPP, which was $21,337. So this money comes in the form of company shares. What I do with this is I normally sell it immediately because I already keep my RSU. So I sell my ESPP right away and diversify into other assets. Now, since I sell my ESPP immediately, I'm able to get an 11.25% return on my ESPP contributions, which ends up being like $2,400 a year, which is pretty good for doing basically zero work. Now, if you're a bit confused about how this math works, or if your company offers an ESPP, I have a whole entire video detailing how OP the ESPP is, and I really recommend checking it out after this one. And remember a bit earlier how I was talking about my RSU? Well, now it's finally coming back into the picture. This year, I got a total of $20,603 from my RSU. If you do a little bit of math, roughly $10,000 of my RSU is withheld in the form of tax. Now, I personally don't sell my RSUs, and some people might have an opinion on that, but I have a lot of faith in the long-term trajectory of the company that I'm working at, and it's not an overly large portion of my portfolio, so I'm pretty comfortable holding it at the allocation that I currently have. Now, aside from my RSUs, all of my other investments into my brokerage accounts is all ETFs. The majority of what I hold is VTI, which is a total US stock market fund, but I also have some global equities ETFs in my 401k. So this concludes what I'll call my traditional investments. The rest of the money I invested this year was actually into crypto. So this year I invested $13,450 into Bitcoin and a little bit of Ethereum here and there. And since I'm a nerd, I've tracked my spending over the last 6 years, but only really started making videos about it over the last 3 years. What's interesting to see is I invested 10% less than I did last year, despite gaining a promotion and making more money. Now, to be fair, last year, a lot of my investments were coming from my savings account and wasn't like organically coming from my paycheck, if that makes sense. That's not to say that I'm dissatisfied with how much I've been investing. Honestly, I'm super happy that I invested this much this year. I'm very lucky and grateful to be in a position where I'm able to invest this much money and make this income at this age. And as you can see, I'm trying to take advantage of this opportunity as best as I can while I still have it. So in 2023, I spent a total of $43,471. Now, the biggest category by far is rent. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment and my share is around $1,300 a month. This includes my rent, my utilities, my internet, and my electricity. But if you total it up, I spent roughly $16,600 on living expenses this year. This year, I spent $7,348 on travel. I did 2 pretty big international trips this year, one to Costa Rica and one to Thailand. And funny enough, these flags are actually very similar. So take a quick second and guess which one's Costa Rica and which one's Thailand. I went to Thailand for roughly 3 weeks with my girlfriend and spent just over $3,200. Thailand was really fun. It was my first time going to Asia as an adult. Like I went when I was a wee lad with my mom, but I don't really think that counts because I couldn't really remember any of it. So together we went to Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Krabi, and also Siem Reap, which is actually in Cambodia. They're all definitely super awesome and I recommend going if you have the chance, but especially Siem Reap, Cambodia to see Angkor Wat. It was, for me, it was a big bucket list item and I was really happy I was able to check that one off my list. The other big international trip I did this year was Costa Rica for 9 days with some of my friends from university, and this cost me roughly $1,300. Costa Rica is also really cool and I really recommend it if you're into like nature and hikes and animals and stuff like that. And Costa Rica is a little bit more expensive than the other places that I've traveled to internationally, especially the excursions, but I definitely think it's still worth visiting. And I actually got really lucky because I was able to split a lot of my group expenses, so it made the trip a little bit cheaper. The remaining money that I used for travel this year was just for flights or travel within the US. So LA, New York, SF, and then also back to Toronto, which I basically count as inter-US flights. This year I spent $7,243 on food. 3,000 of that is on groceries, and the other 4,000 whatever, which is fast food, restaurants, bars, coffee shops, that sort of thing. Now this category actually surprised me a little bit. Groceries were fine. I expected that amount. I normally spend around $300 a month, so that's all in line. But the eating out is pretty high. To be fair, I'm grouping a lot of things into eating out, but it is still a bit higher than I had expected. Another shocker this year was shopping, where I spent $3,270, but more specifically on clothing, where I spent like $1,300, which is a super surprise to me because in 2022 I spent $560 or something like that. So it's increased by like 250% in the span of a year. Now, in my defense, I've stopped like growing like this, and because of that, I've been wanting to invest into higher quality clothing and stuff that will last me a long time. And if you're wearing clothes that make you feel good, you're gonna be more confident, you're gonna have a better time. And these are all copes that I tell myself when I look at that number. Jokes aside, I am enjoying dressing a little bit nicer, but in 2024, I want to focus more on quality rather than quantity, which means spending time and saving for a really nice piece that I'm 100% certain on, rather than like an okay piece that I'm like 60% certain on just because it's on sale. Do you know what I mean? The other big shopping category I had this year was related to camera gear. I am shooting on a new lens that I got recently this year. This is a Sigma 18 to 35, and it costs like $600 used, which is actually more expensive than the camera body. And altogether in camera gear, I spent around $900 this year. All the other money that I spent in shopping was just random things here and there. Now, to be honest, the rest of my spending is pretty mundane and boring, so I'm not going to bore you too much with it. What I will do is I'll throw a skanky chart on screen where you can see my cash flow in and cash flow out, and I'm going to speed run the rest of my categories. Saved $5,853. Student loans, $3,049. Not categorized, $2,811. Gifts, $1,522. Grooming, which is like haircuts, $565. Transportation, $602. And cell phone, $457. And really quickly, by the way, I love the flow of the skanky chart. I'm definitely going to be using that more in the future because it's super awesome. Now, looking at the overall trends comparing from 2022 to 2023, like I said a bit earlier, there's a 10% decrease in the amount I invested from 2022 to 2023. And I also spent 10% more in 2023, which when you look at it may look bad at first glance, especially if you consider that in 2023, I'm making more money than I did in the previous year. But I think when I look at it deeper, in 2022, I was spending like no money at all. I was kind of living a deprived life of things I would want to do. And I was just saying a no to a lot of things that I would have rather said yes to, only purely off the guise of it costing too much money. And one of my New Year's resolutions for 2023 was actually to spend more money and have more fun and live in the moment, because I kept telling myself at any point in time, I literally could just die and all this money that I have in my 401k realistically cannot be buried with me. So even though I increased my spending by 10% and decreased my investing by 10%, I would say the fun that I had and the memories I created far exceed 10%. So with that being said, I'm definitely going to be carrying that mindset into 2024. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. I don't know if it's the new year, everyone's making New Year's resolutions, but I feel like 2024, I'm going to be my bag. So please leave me the video ideas. I will do them. And if you want to see another video by me for you, you can watch this video right here where it's this exact same video, but in 2022.